So we'll have a case study called loan management system, which is actually like some loan management processing and stuff like that. We'll do that. So yeah, mm, even if you missed any of your previous sessions, that's fine. Servlet, we're starting it afresh, which need not know any background of any other previous sessions. If you know what a class is, what an object is, you're fine. So make sure you follow these two to understand how we create a web application using Java. Like some UI frameworks like struts, Spring MVC, and all that stuff, actually based on all this servlet and JSP. Like if you hear JSF or struts or Spring MVC, these all frameworks all depend on JSP and servlet. Okay, so we'll just talk about it. If you guys can see my screen, I'll just move towards PPTs. Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen? Okay. Okay. So we're going to talk about servlets, and we'll see what a servlet is, what a web container is, and why do we need to create these, and how these works and all that stuff. So objective of this session is understand the servlet architecture, compare servlet and other similar technologies, understand the servlet lifecycle. It's very important. Even if you write any certification on um, web components, they probably ask about life cycle of servlet. Handle request and response. Like all this while in few examples, I was talking about a request and a response. In this session, probably you will understand what a request is and what a response is, and generate HTML on the fly, like dynamic HTML. Like if you go to Yahoo or somewhere, you enter your details, login details, you click on sign in, you see content dynamically depending on your user ID, right? So you you will see your own emails and I see my own emails. It's like dynamically generated stuff, not like it's same for everyone. And then handle sessions, like how do you handle a session, what a session is all about. We're going to talk about all this in this presentation, so please follow and stop me wherever you have questions. Okay, so evolution of dynamic content, like how actually this display of dynamic content changed, okay, over years. Like initially we used to have something called CGI, or common gateway interface, which has been like used initially, like even before servlets. And then we moved towards Cold Fusion, ASP, active server pages in the .NET. Like this is like evolution of technology. It's not specific to Java we are talking about here. And server-side JavaScript, and then PHP. Then came in Java servlets and Java server pages. These two were like been there from quite some time. Still we do use JSPs and servlets in Java applications, and latest technologies are now using HTML. Like we send a response from the servlet, and that's been rendered in HTML and stuff like that. So we'll talk about all that, but this is the evolution of technologies. Like initial days, common gateway interface. Then other technologies are like Cold Fusion that came in, and ASPs. So this is just to know what kind of technologies and where Java servlets came in. Like it came in very late, but it was there for quite some time as like a choice. Okay. Then so CGI, when we used CGI, it was like a request. What is a request? When you go on the web application, okay, when you go on the web application, when you click on submit, okay, that means the form, like you filled a registration form. When you click on submit, the data is being submitted, right? So that means we are sending something to the server, like, or we are asking the server to load something. Like when you type www.google.com, that means we are asking server to bring something, like bring the Google search page or something like that. Or when you actually type in or when you are submitting, you're actually sending some data. So all these are called requests. That means anything that goes to the server, either you ask for a resource or you send some data to the server, is called a request. Okay. To handle this request, initially the choice was CGI, Common Gateway Interface. So each request is one like request for CGI1 is a main process. It hits the main process, and child process for each of these. Like it's not multi-thread. Like if you see here, request for each of these CGI requests is creating a child process, okay, within the server called CGI based web server. That means like a server is nothing but a container which understands how to handle requests and responses. That means it's a container, like it has all these CGI components available. Okay, if you send some data, it knows where to look for, and if it hits the component sitting on the server correctly, like you cannot access Amazon.com. Um, uh, Hold on a second. I think one of you guys. Okay, so we were talking about why servlets we are using. What is this web server all about? Initial technologies of web server is like CGI. So there used to be a CGI server. I'm talking about web container, right? So what is this web container or web server is all about? It knows how to process request and response. For now, think about it like that. Okay. You must have heard something about like Tomcat or Apache Web Server or these kind of stuff, or IIOS. Uh, all these are like containers. They know, like they sit somewhere. Like if you just type in www.amazon1.com, um, like if there is a placeholder, or if that host name resolves to some actual IP address, that's when actually it goes to a page. If there is nobody who knows about that, or if there is no server who is handling that request over the internet, then you will see a blank page, right? So how to handle a request is all been handled by these web servers. Like these web servers are by registered in a ISP, like internet service provider, and they expose a host name which is like unique for anybody else. That means when you say www.google.com or amazon.com, it gets resolved to a IP address. Like that's like a user friendly name, right? IP address is not a user friendly, like you cannot remember like 191.106.2.1 or something like that. If I tell you access my website with that, you'll freak out. So in they gave a user friendly name, okay, www.amazon.com or google.com. When you do that, it dynamically looks up and determines an IP address, which is the IP address we registered with the internet service provider. Once it has been resolved, it tries to identify the server. Okay, if that server knows how to handle this request or not. If it is not able to handle it, it shows a page not found. Or if it is able to handle it, it tries to create the child process, get the resource that you have requested for, and displays the page. Okay, this is the general pattern. Okay, this is the general pattern of how a web application works. To deal this with this kind of stuff, earlier technologies that came in were like CGI. So when we are talking about web server, this is the context in mind. Oh, okay. So you have written some code, you have put it on a server, and now you want everybody else to access it. So you have made it like web enabled. That means you put it in a some location where everybody can access it. And once everybody can access it, like it hits like requests come to your server, and you write code to, okay, if they say uh, if they say homepage, you show something. If they say sign in, you show something. If they say sign up, you show something. All these kind of stuff you have to handle it. Otherwise, users will not know. Okay. So to do that, CGI has like life cycle. Like any request that comes in, they create a child process and stuff like that. Let's move on. So CGI is not our thing. We just want to know like how CGI used to work, because that was the first technology, common gateway interface. That means they provided a common gateway called the main process. Any request goes through that main process and creates a child process. Okay, so now dealing with in our previous slide we saw, okay, there are various other technologies that came in around the same time or before Java servlets and JSPs, and now we'll see like what exactly is Java servlets and JSPs in terms of Java EE stack that we are aware of the architecture diagram before, where exactly these JSPs and servlets sit in. Okay, so a servlet, what is a servlet? A Java program that extends the functionality. You guys know the Java program already, right? You guys can write a class, you guys can write a main method and know what a class is, what an object is, and all that. So, with that context in mind, it is also a similar Java program that extends the functionality of a web server. That means there is a web server like Tomcat or a JBoss application server. Okay, there are those servers like our Jetty, or you guys must have heard any other servers, JRun, or those kind of stuff. Okay, so any of those servers, like those are off the shelf components. That means they are all available already. You don't need to write them, you don't need to rewrite them, because somebody else already created those servers, web containers for you, and made it available. You just like you must have heard about people using WebLogic, okay, or JBoss or WebSphere. Okay, so all these are off the shelf components owned by various companies. Okay, IBM owns some, I am or Oracle owns WebLogic and stuff like that. Okay, so all these are available already, so you are going to either purchase it for your company, or you are going to use some open source, like we use Tomcat, we use JBoss. Okay, so you can use these kind of stuff where you don't need to spend much money. Like JBoss you need to spend some money, but Tomcat it's free. Okay, so you can actually use those kind of stuff, and you write your Java program and put it on those web servers or web containers, and then it is available to be accessed over the web. That means now is the time your Java programs get exposed on the Internet Explorer. Like if you want to execute your Java program, you don't just say run like how we used to do all this time. Those are called desktop based applications. Now we are maturing our Java program, which we learned in the past, to become a web application. How exactly it becomes a web application, all that architecture, we are going to talk about it using JSPs and servlets. Okay, that means these guys sit on container. If you look at our architectural diagram here, these guys sit on like JSPs and servlets, sit on the container. These container is either a Tomcat container or a WebLogic container or somewhere. Okay, so if you look at it, you guys learned so far what an applet is, what an Java Bean is, Java SDK you learned. That means anything related to core Java, collections, IO streams, all those stuff you guys learned already. So now from Java SDK or J2SE Standard Edition, we are moving towards Java EE Enterprise Edition. That means you are trying to create some enterprise level applications, okay, which involves these enterprise level components like how to manage a transaction, how to send a message, how to send an email using Java program, or like say for example, when you place an order, you need to send an email. How all these kind of things work, right? You expose your application to the web uh, with your own name or your own application. Once it has been created, you're just going to once it has been created, you're just going to create the application, you create the Java page, create the JSP, write the Java code that actually handles the data that you're sending, and it works. Okay, and how it works and all that stuff we are going to talk about it, and how to configure these stuff. Like right now, any Java program that you have written so far, you know how to write the Java, how to run it, how to make it connect to the database and all that, right? Same thing, we're going to make it a little bit matured on the how we invoke it. Okay, that's the only difference. It took a while for me initially to understand why are we doing this. The reason why we are doing this is, if it is a standalone Java class that you guys did so far, I need to have access to source code, right? If you don't give me a .java file, or if I don't send you guys .java file, you cannot run anything, right? You cannot run anything. You can, if you don't compile it, you cannot do anything and all that stuff. But here, like we cannot share code, right? Sometimes it's our proprietary thing. We don't want to share the code, but we want to share the functionality with the customers. Okay, I'm working for a banking application, so suppose all I want to do is expose some functionality to the customer. So that means I'm not sharing the code. All I'm doing is I'm deploying my code to the server somewhere. Okay, and where the server resides, nobody knows. Where how I am handling those, nobody knows. All I'm trying to do is exposing stuff. What I'm exposing, say bankofamerica.com, it shows me a banking web page. When you enter a username, I need to authenticate you, and I need to identify your account, and I need to let you in. I should not be when I enter my credentials, I should not show your account. I should be showing you my own account, whichever is mapped to that username. So all this we need to take care and just make it simple on the web application. That's the thing. That's the goal. Okay. So that means we are doing everything that we did so far and just making it a little bit more sophisticated, easy to access for the customer. No need to have the hassle of download the source code, run the source code on your computer, and then I'll show the output. It's not the case. It's making it more simple. Access the browser. Any computer will have a browser. Access the browser, and this is my URL. If you know my URL, you're set. You don't need to know anything else. That's the reason why we do this. This is making the consumer's job easy. Whoever is trying to consume or use your data, use your Java program easier. Okay. Are you guys with me so far? Any questions? This is just bringing in context for you why we are using servlets or JSPs. We'll talk about it in detail in the coming slides, but my question is more towards this technical jargon that you're hearing: web server, request, response, dynamic content. All this making sense so far? Or ask me questions right now before we move forward. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Are you with me? Okay. All right. Fine. So let's move on. So now you guys know where this JSP servlet stack is all about. Let's move a little bit forward. Okay. So let's see here, architectural diagram. Like on the UI, like we saw applet. Applet also displays our ATM application that we saw in the case study is all in J2SE. That means we used only applets there. And the applet is also on the client side, which talks to server, like some controller, and that authenticated us, right, our password, and one of those code is like a controller on the server side. But you can either use that or you can use some web container there and talk to database, or you can also talk to EJBs. Like that's a next thing that we are going to learn. Right now we're going to concentrate on the web container. So if somebody says I have a web container only, I don't have an EJB container, that means they just have JSPs and servlets in their application, not the EJBs. For execution of EJB, you need an application server. We are going to use JBoss as the application server, and web container we are going to use Tomcat as the application server. And application server also has a web container. So that's why when somebody uses a JBoss, they don't need again a Tomcat server. So if you talk about something like that in the interview, you will get caught like you never worked on it. Like if somebody says, okay, I use JBoss and I also use a Tomcat, but it's not totally wrong. But what I'm trying to say is in modern day world, you don't want to have two headaches. Like taking out a web container, managing Tomcat, and taking out and using JBoss and managing JBoss as well. So you don't want to have two headaches. You just want to have only one headache, which is in terms of why I'm saying headache is like maintenance. Like maintenance is always a headache. Okay, so. So we just want to have one pane, which is JBoss, okay, or one application server, or one web container, okay. Um, yeah, that may be like 60 to 80% true, but in real world, people may do it, but they may have their own specific reasons why they are doing it. But to you to learn, think about it like, okay, our application doesn't have EJB, so we are using web container, which is only Tomcat or something like that. Anything related to Tomcat, which is not an application server. If you want to use something like EJBs and all that stuff, or inbuilt transaction management and all that, you're going to use a EJB container. Okay. And application server has both web container and EJB container together. That is called an application server. So now that you know the difference between a web server and application server, web server is just handling the requests. That means whatever that comes in, identifying the components like a servlet, and then handle the request and send the response back. It doesn't do anything related to anything little bit more complicated, like transaction management, Java mailing API support, or it doesn't do more like EJB container, which is like more robust and um, more complicated stuff, like looking accessing it like on its same JVM, like though the data is on different JVM, using this RMI, like remote method invocations and all that stuff. It behaves like remember we talked about stubs and skeletons. All those support is given to an application by using an EJB container. Okay, so a little bit more, like it does a little bit more heavier stuff than a web container. Okay, so that's the difference. If somebody asks you what's the difference between a web server and an application server does a bunch of more stuff like inbuilt transaction management, security, mailing APIs, JNDIs, and all that. Whereas a web container, it just handles the web components, like it handles the request and response. One famous web server is Apache Web Server. Like typical architecture would be any request on the left hand side, like if you are looking at a browser that can hit web server like Apache Web Server. That's different from Tomcat. Okay, so web server, and it just reroutes whatever your content is, whatever your website is, whatever your domain is, and then it reroutes to your Tomcat server and or your JBoss server. So there can be one web server which is actually exposed to the outside world. There a little bit of checking of domain or where the request is coming from, or the request from the load balancer hits that directly. What is a load balancer? Like say for example, I have a server on the that is being exposed on Amazon, say suppose, and that server will not take the traffic until I put it on a load balancer. That means any request that comes to our website first hits the load balancer. That load balancer knows how many servers are there. Based on the load at that time, okay, request came into me. Okay, which server I need to send? That means Tomcat did not receive the request yet. Load balancer looks at it. Oh, okay, okay. So I'll redirect it to server A. So if the server A exists, it handles it. Though I created a server B, I did not add it to load balancer. Load balancer is not aware of it, so it will not hit that. Like server, though I launched it, it will not take the traffic until I put it on a load balancer, and load balancer knows about it. That means we control the traffic. Like we don't want to overwhelm a single server with like 1,000 requests, and the second server is sitting idle. We want to make it efficient, right? Like that's why we will have a load balancer typically, and that actually deals with any request that is coming in. And then through Apache Web Server or something, we expose some content like dynamic images and the images that we maintain and stuff like that, and we reroute the request to a Tomcat server, and that knows all the request handling, like, oh, this guy invoked sign up. Okay, on this website he invoked a sign up, so I actually show a sign up page. All that kind of stuff has been taken care by the Tomcat server. Like outside world knows only hits only the Apache web server, and that Apache web server internally talks to Tomcat and gets the request and response, and then renders it back to the UI. Okay, so all that is like a bigger picture. For you right now, you have a browser in your computer, you have a Tomcat server that you are going to download today, and whatever servlet that we are going to talk about, you are going to run it on your browser. Okay, that's all. So in the real life world, there is a load balancer, there is an Apache web server that hits your all that stuff. Now we are just learning. Okay, we cannot bring in a load balancer because that's all commercial, right? Like when you're doing a professional application, your operations folks will help you in configuring a load balancer and Apache web server and stuff like that. After that, Java developer comes in. Okay, you have all the web server, Apache web server, and all that installed, and now this is my website. So anything that comes to and hits your web server, if it matches this URL that I am looking for, then send it to me. I'll take care of it. That is how we configure our Apache web server. Okay, so don't get confused. So if you understood how it works, forget about it. For now, from now on, we're going to talk about requests to Tomcat web server and how the Tomcat web server responds. Okay, that's the only thing we're going to talk about. Fine. So, like a web container, now we talked about application server and web server and all that. Um, Fine. Any questions? Are you guys with me? Confused totally? Feel free to talk about it right now. Any questions? I cannot hear any of you guys. I don't know why. Maybe it's any questions?
No.
Okay, fine. Let's move on. Okay, so this is one other example, like service on demand. Like you have rich clients, you have mobile devices and mobile browsers. All you're going to do is invoke this container on the server side and access the pages or access the data, and that internally talks to some other services and stuff like that, or talk to database and renders the response back. So this is typically how your application looks like you may have n number of clients, like you may have a web browser or a Android or iOS client or an iPad client like mobile, and also you may have something like desktop based access as well if you want to install and expose it as well. So all this hit the same server, and you're going to talk to the database, okay, or something, and renders the response back in its own understandable format. If it is from web, you are going to display it as HTML. If it is from phone, you're going to handle it on the phone. Like iOS will handle it in a different way. Android will handle it in a different way and render the response. Or yeah, okay. Then so where is servlet and JSP? Now, this is a typical client side. You may have a browser, desktop, or any other thing that talks to the server side. Server side has like JSP or a servlet here in the web tier, and EJB tier is where your stateless session beans and all that will sit. And we'll talk about it probably in a couple of weeks. And then this anything related to database is all in the after JDBC after EJB tier. So anything that you do, anything that you're talking about right now is all sits in the web tier. Like what are these tiers? This is nothing but n-tier architecture. That means your application, the various components or various code that you're going to write is logically separated into multiple tiers. That is called n-tier architecture. Okay, this is called client tier. That means why did they come up with n-tier architecture is today you're going to use something like Adobe Flex. Couple of years ago, a lot of people tried Adobe Flex, and later they realized all the UI is all messed up and it's slow in response and stuff like that. Now it's all HTML5, and people started using all these Angular JS and stuff like that. Like HTML responses make it more flashy and make it simple, lightweight, and stuff like that. So if you want to do that, so if you want to change any technology on the client side stack, it should not impact anything on the server. Today we are using servlet 2.3, 2.x or 3.x, and tomorrow we might want to use something like a struts framework. We don't want to use plain old servlets. So if you are working on something like that, client side is transparent to it. That means client side does not even know whether we are using struts or servlet or something else. Okay, so like that they brought in some n-tier architecture. So each tier is independent of the other one. Okay, So if you change it to struts on the web tier, EJB tier also is not aware of it. All it knows is some request came in, it is processing. That's all. So you can use a JSP or a servlet or a struts or Spring MVC, doesn't matter. Okay. So all that is being taken care in the web tier. So that's how we divide our application and tasks in such a way. Oh, okay, client side UI is doing this. Server side has two different stuff: business logic and web tier. So if somebody asks you where all you have worked for in your interview, yeah, I worked for end to end. Like I know how to write a UI, I know how to write a web tier, that is a JSP and servlet. I know what is EJB is, so I worked on EJB tier. I worked on JDBC and Hibernate stuff, so I know how to talk to the database, how to use JDBC without Hibernate and all that. So that's the thing. Like you know end to end, but if you are talking about server, like you may expect questions similar, right? So why does lot of people have to update a lot in Java EE or any open source stack? Because there are like n tiers. In any of these tiers, people may start grilling on you, right? They may ask you database questions, they may ask you Hibernate related questions, EJB questions, they may ask you web server related questions, and they may ask you core Java related questions, right? So this brings in a big stack for you, right? So that's why people grill a lot, because it's like wide, like anywhere you may be caught if you are not, if you have not done. Okay. Or even if you have done, you may not have experienced that particular question. So that's the thing. That being all said, in this end tier, all this while we were talking about like applets and all that, remember a couple of weeks ago, swings and applets, all those are all on the client side. Anything that is displayed to the UI customer is all on the client side. Okay. When we talk about client side now, it's all on the UI. Okay. Or if you talk about EJB tier, and who is the client for EJB tier? Web tier. And who is the client for EIS tier that we talked about here? EJB tier. Okay. So that means client side is whoever is invoking that guy, and who is getting the response back from the other side. Like web tier is actually getting a request from the client side, and the web tier is actually responding back to the client side. Similar way, server side web tier is actually sending a request to EJB, and it is sending EJB tier is actually sending back a response to the web tier and stuff like that. Okay, fine. That being said, let's move on. Like, what are the advantages of servlet? Java objects which extend the functionality of a HTTP server, a big plus. And dynamic customization of content. That means you can customize your content dynamically. Uh, Platform and server independent. No CGI limitations. Limitations of CGI are like it has like probably multi-threading is a problem with that. Uh, I'm not too sure. It's old, so let's leave it like that. Better performance, easier to write than CGI, and then no networking restrictions like applets, and do not create a new process. Yeah, this was the limitation in CGI. Like it creates a new process for each of these, but servlet creates a new thread for each of these. Okay, requests that we send. Okay, servlets can persist over time. That means it can save some data over time, putting in a session and stuff like that. So what is a limitation? Like anything that is in CGI, which is not better performant or not easier to write, we could easily write using HTTP servlets, like servlets. Okay, that's the advantage. Server enhance. Okay, enhance or change the base functionality of the server, allowing the server to handle tasks that were once relegated to external CGI programs. So it extended the server functionality by just writing some code rather than exposing it outside. It's all internal. Okay, all this stuff is internal to the server. We're just extending the functionality to handle it for our own needs. Okay. Power of servlets, they are like Java. Anywhere, wherever people ask you advantage, wherever you are using Java, it's portable, um, and safe, elegant. Integration is easy, extensible and flexible. Power of it is oops, like object oriented prompt, like platform independent and stuff like that. Okay. Then here, servlet details. You get a request from a computer or a mobile or something, it ultimately gets translated to HTTP request. Okay, that HTTP request is servlet loaded. What does it do? Tomcat server, say in this green, it is a Tomcat server. It received a request. Okay, it looks for the request and it says like, okay, is the servlet loaded? No. If it is not loaded, it loads that class, that servlet class, and it invokes it, and it runs the class, and then sends the response back to the client as an HTTP response. That means any communication between these is a HTTP response, request and response. HTTP is what? It's a protocol. What is a protocol? It's a language that client and server will speak. Okay. So any URL that you type in gets converted to HTTP, right? That's a hypertext transfer protocol. Uh, to me, protocol is similar to the language that we speak. It's the mode of communication between the client and server. Okay, fine. So that's how it works. Like, what does it do? Server, it loads the servlet if there is any. It invokes it, it runs the servlet and gets the response and sends it back to the client. Okay, this is how a servlet works. Let's see the servlet lifecycle. So what does it do? Okay, before we deal with it, if I show a probably an example, then you guys can think, okay, servlet, what is a servlet? It's not a big beast, it's a simple thing. Let's probably run something and then see. Okay, for you, file, new, other, you got to do a Java web project, dynamic web project. Okay, look at this carefully. Dynamic web project, servlets. Okay, target runtime. I want to create a runtime of Tomcat. I have Tomcat 7. You guys all have to download Tomcat 7. Okay. Then I'm going to show location of my Tomcat. Okay. So once I show location of it, then I got everything that I need. Next, finish. Okay. That means, so that means if you carefully look at it, it went on to Java EE perspective. All this while anything that we do are on Java perspective. Like in workspace, we have a bunch of perspectives. Okay, like here, Java, EE, Java perspective, and stuff like that. Okay, so we are talking about Java EE now. Okay, fine. Once this is done, let's actually see what we can do with a Java application here. Okay, so this is all Java source code, and this is where you're going to write your servlets, and this is your like web resources. So that means all these are created by default when you created a Java EE example. Okay, fine. Now what all you need to have in an application is this. Okay, let's create a servlet. I already have this. Let me actually see. Yeah, probably I have this. Okay, so something we are doing it here. I'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, so now with that being said, okay, I'm just creating. I'll just explain it what it is in a bit. I'm just taking a sample. Okay, so I'm just going to remove stuff. The unnecessary stuff I'm going to remove it. Okay, so I have it like this. I have a sublet covered. Okay, fine. And then now I have a Tomcat server. Okay, I'm going to start my server from Eclipse itself. It's done. Now, okay, run on server. Okay, it doesn't show run as Java application because there is no main method within it. Okay, so if I say run on server, I showed my server. Let's see what it is going to do. It's restarting my server. See here. So some stuff I put in. Instead, I'll just say hello for you guys. Okay. Instead of all this stuff, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to print in hello. Okay. I don't want all this, right? I'm just going to say okay. I'm just going to say all this, remove all this. So this is all in the body of the application. So I just need not worry about anything else. I'm just going to say here okay. So I just modified it. So the moment I saved it, it's actually reloading everything. I just want to, yeah, it's reloading. Once it reloaded, I just want to run it again. Okay, let's see. So that means whatever the Java code that you modified, I am trying to rerun it. Now it should show only. It's taking time than what I expect. Okay, so now it started. See, it is just showing only hello Ravi. So this is how, this is only within application, right? It need not be just within Java code that you want to run. You can run it even on our Chrome. See here, see, even on, I'm executing it on Chrome. Okay, so what it is doing is localhost is my local computer. That's the default host name that can get resolved to on your local IP address. Like if your server is running on your local system, and if you want to test it, you can say localhost colon port number. Like on your default is 8080. I have some other stuff, so that's why I modified it to 8081. But I think um, 8081. So you may have 8080 or default 80. You can modify that within Tomcat. However, whichever port you want this particular server to be listened on. And servlets is the name of your application. Okay, servlets is the name of my application. Okay, when it is deployed on the server, it is called servlets, right? So that's why it is accessing my project. And when I passed in hello, what it is doing, it is looking at web.xml. So that means in your web application, web.xml holds a very big role. What does it do? Let's see. um, you passed in slash hello, so that means it should know here slash hello URL pattern. That means in the URL pattern, if it sees a hello, it identified, oh okay, this is the servlet I need to look for. Okay, this should be unique, otherwise it will get confused. So URL pattern slash hello, that means okay, slash hello has a mapping of hello get servlet. And what is this hello get servlet? It is identifying a servlet class based on that. That means these two tags are very important. um, it actually looks at the URL pattern and identifies the servlet name and servlet class where it has to hit. Okay, so it identified the servlet that we have written, and it went into the servlet. And this servlet, if you carefully look at it, it is actually extending HTTP servlet. That means it is a type of HTTP servlet which is aware of a HTTP protocol. Okay, that means this is a Java class. This is a Java class that came in within our servlet APIs. Okay, it came in with its servlet APIs, and it is easy to write. If you want to write your own servlet, you're just extending an HTTP servlet, and HTTP servlet has some methods that we are overriding, like do get and do post. We're going to talk about it in a bit. But what happened was, when we did here default, it got invoked as get method. That means we are asking the web server to get a resource at hello. What happened? It looked at it in web.xml. It identifies the servlet, and it invoked a do get method. Okay, and what happened here? It is actually writing something to the browser, like a title of the browser, and it is writing some text to the browser, and that's it. So it has written using a print writer, and it has written something. That's it. We did not do anything else. Automatically, the response is rendered on the UI. That means whatever you want the user to see, you can actually hijack it here, but from the response dot get writer. That means if you have a handle of request and response, once you have a handle of request and response, whatever you write on the response object here gets written onto the customer's page. That means this is the request page, right? Hello is the request page. And because I turned off the server, now it doesn't know where to go. Okay, I turned off the server. See, connection refused. That means it already turned off. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm just going to stop it here. Like Eclipse is slow, that's why it is still running. Okay, So let me go back here. Right. So let me, if I start the server again, this will work. Okay. If I do the refresh, it starts working again. So that means whatever I have written here on the response, like you guys know this already, right? This is an writer. That means it is writing some characters to it, right? Reader and writer are characters. So response.getWriter, and we have written it and closed it. That's it. It is taking care of how to respond to the UI. Are you guys with me so far? Any questions? Did you guys understand how a request that you sent through web browser got resolved onto how a servlet is invoked? Like a lot of people are, if you take myself, I could write this servlet right now, by writing this and all this stuff. I always used to get problems. I always used to get some error or the other. So you need to understand it. If you don't understand and try to play around with it, you end up in trouble. All you need to understand is, okay, this is the request pattern that is coming in. I need to handle that request pattern. I need to identify the servlet. And once I identify the servlet, I need to give the fully qualified class name of the servlet. That's it. It's going to go here. And depending on whether the request that came in is a get or a post, we are going to handle it accordingly. Because it's an HTTP servlet, it knows how to deal with HTTP request and HTTP response. And the objects that we have are called HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response. Any questions? Ask me right now. Any questions?
In web.xml servlet name, can we give any other name other than the class name?
Here, yeah, it's your own name. All you need to know is here you can give a different name, and here you have to give the same name. It is just like with this name only, it is mapping this guy. Otherwise, it will not know. If you give
Oh,
a different name here and different name here, it will not know. Okay, but if you give this name like this, probably it should work. No problem. I'm just rerunning it. Okay, still working, right? Yeah. So it's just the lookup. Yeah, as you said, it took a while for us also to know initially, like, okay, can we give a different name, or why this name and this name should match and all that. Then why it has to match? Because this is how it is going to map a URL with a class, servlet class. So these two tags always go hand in hand. Servlet and servlet mapping. These two go hand in hand. If you gave servlet and if you did not give a servlet mapping, then you're gone. It will never work. That's the mistake we used to do when I started my work. I always used to forget this tag. Don't forget it. It's the heart of your web application. And why we have to deal with it only in web.xml? It's heart of your web application. Tomcat looks up your web.xml by default, and from there anything starts. If you use a struts, if you use Spring, everything, Tomcat knows only from web.xml. That means those are also servlets. Those frameworks are also servlets. You have to configure those servlets here. Then only, oh, okay, anything dot as hello dot do, I need to send to struts application. Anything star data Spring, I need to send to Spring application. That's how it knows. You distinguish it by using a different URL pattern. Otherwise, it will not know. Any request that hits your Tomcat server first comes to web.xml. That's how these web containers are written. This is the standard web.xml. And once it looks up the servlet here, it redirects you to whichever servlet controller code that you have written. Okay. And within web.xml, you configure a bunch of other stuff as well, like filters and all that stuff. We'll talk about it eventually. This week and next week, you will know a bunch of more stuff and interesting stuff. But always remember, web.xml is the place to start. That's where people lose track on it. Like, oh, why? How is it working? It is working because you put it in web.xml. It's not working because you did not put something in web.xml. Okay, it's not a magic here. Nothing is going as a magic. Okay. Uh,
Mm.
any other questions?
Will this all the servlets in the web.xml are loaded even the request doesn't come for them?
Yeah, that's the way. That's where I got sidetracked here, right? So here, until you get a request, it will not be loaded. That's the servlet lifecycle we were talking about, right? That's where I went back to show you guys an example. Okay? So what happens when you did a HTTP request? It will not be loaded until then. Once you got the request, it checks, oh, is it already loaded? If it is loaded, it uses that. Otherwise, it loads that class and then invokes all these run servlet methods and then responds back. Okay, that's where the lifecycle comes in. What happens is init, the lifecycle of it is very, very important. Init, service, and destroy. We're not talking about HTTP servlet here. We are talking about a generic servlet which comes from servlet APIs. And what does it have? Init, service, and destroy. In it, it initializes all the initial parameters if there are any and all that stuff from the web.xml. Service is where it executes the service. That means it executes the request. Destroy is where the object gets destroyed. Okay, that means if you have used a HTTP servlet, that means in the HTTP servlet code, it extended the generic servlet, and it has overridden in such a way. If the request that came in is a get request, invoke do get. If the request that came in is a do post, post request, then invoke do post. Like that, HTTP servlet is being overridden. Like HTTP servlet class overridden the default behavior of a servlet called generic servlet, which actually has a service method. That service method of generic servlet is being overridden by HTTP servlet. That's the reason why do get is in do get or do post are being invoked depending on the kind of request that you post. Okay, so what is this do get and do post? But we'll talk about that in a bit. But life cycle is very important. Like init is where the servlet object has been created and it is set with all the initial parameters and all that stuff. Service is where actual execution of it happens. Okay, and destroy is where the object has been destroyed. When you shut down the tomcat, that's when it gets destroyed. Okay, so if you remember here, okay, it is loaded. That means using some reflections APIs or something, it is loading the servlet. Okay, it knows the fully qualified class bar, right? That's why in the web.xml we give the fully qualified class name. That means by just knowing the name of the class, it loads the class using our reflections API, similar to how you did class.forName in JDBC, right? In the same way, it loads that class and then it does internally invoke the run method that actually runs the service method. And the service method actually is being overridden in HTTP to invoke either do get or do post. One of those methods gets executed and then uh, returns the response. Okay. Okay.
Will we
Yeah.
can we use generic servlet?
Yeah, you can use it, but you have to write bunch of right written stuff to invoke it. Like it doesn't know HTTP, right? It's not specific to HTTP. Like that's a standard interview question before. Like okay, if you want to write your own HTTP servlet called HTTP Ravi servlet or something, how are you going to write? Then that's the way to go. You have to override generic servlet and you have to write bunch of code how actually HTTP servlet is handling the HTTP related stuff like how a request is being invoked, how a response is being invoked, how it is converting a response to actually HTTP to write it on the client, and all that stuff, how it is establishing a socket, all that stuff you got to override. Okay, that's when you use a generic servlet. Otherwise, you cannot use a generic servlet directly. We are dealing with only HTTP servlet here. If you want to write your own servlet, that's when you extend a generic servlet and use it. You cannot configure here a generic servlet and get it executed here. It may be invoked, but it will not execute like how you behave, how you want your response to be written to, how your response to be written to client. That may not happen. You have to write some extra code for that. Invocation may happen from based on the URL pattern. Okay, let's see here. Based on the source code. Okay, so it's an abstract class. See here, it cannot create an instance. So that means it needs some concrete class to extend it. So you're going to write something like generic servlet concrete or something like that. And then you're going to configure it. Configure it. Okay. We got to configure it and then invoke it. And you got to do some post processing. Once a servlet service method has been invoked, you have to actually, if you see here, there will be a init method and service method. So you got to override your service method in such a way it can respond back to the client. Okay. It's not an HTTP request. See here, it's a servlet request. So that means you have to typecast it to convert to HTTP request, which does bunch of stuff. How to write it back to it? Like it doesn't know about anything about HTTP protocol. It is protocol independent when you do generic servlet. So you have to do bunch of more stuff to behave it like an HTTP protocol. Um, yeah, that's the reason why you may not use it directly, but you have to write bunch of other stuff, um, mimic the behavior of HTTP. So so that's why we cannot use it. Is it making sense to you?
Yes.
Yeah, it's not like you cannot use it. You can use it, but you have to write bunch of other stuff. Fine. Servlet lifecycle. Servlet lifecycle here is like what is happening. Request for servlet one comes in. Main process actually creates a thread servlet one, and if the second request comes in, it's going to be a different thread. This is the difference. If you remember CGI is actually creating a child process for any main process that is any new request that is coming in, because Java supports threads, multi-threading. Any new request that comes in will be a new thread, like that is being processed. That means there is like only one instance. It is loaded. Servlet is loaded only once, but multiple threads execute the same object depending on number of requests that comes in. Okay. Servlet initialized once, reused until destroyed, and garbage collected. This is very important interview question. People may ask you how many times a servlet is initialized. Okay. Then, so here is the thing: servlet lifecycle. So servlet code loads the servlet code and handles the request in the server and then unloads it. Okay, this is the life cycle. So init, service, destroy. Okay, so a servlet is constructed and initialized. It then services 0 or more requests until the service that it extends shut down. Initialized only once, stays resident in memory while servicing the request. Multiple threads of execute service, one for each client connection. So that means initialized only one, stays in memory while servicing the request. Multiple threads of execute service, one for each client connection. The servlet interface defines the lifecycle methods like init, service, and destroy. This is very important. That's why it's probably repeated multiple times. What does init method do? Oh, great. Called by server immediately after the servlet is instantiated. Called only once. Servlet creates and initializes the resources needed for handling. That means in the generic servlet, if we saw this public void init method is what gets invoked. And if something happens here, servlet exception is thrown when servlet cannot initialize necessary resources. Okay, so init method is where we initialize all the resources that are required, like initial parameters that have been passed and all that. Okay, service method. It is the heart of the servlet. It handles all the requests sent by the client. Each request message from a client results in a single call to the servlet service method. It reads the request and produces the response message. It reads the request and produces a response message. Public void service method is what it gets invoked. Destroy. This signifies the end of the servlet's lifecycle. It's also a good place to save any persistent information that will be used next time the servlet is loaded. It is called to allow the servlet to clean up any resources. That means any resources that have been held will be cleaned up at this point. Servlet loaded on demand. First time user accesses the servlet. Once loaded, the servlet is in the memory. So this is probably the stuff that we discussed already. Yeah. Client request service unloaded on closing the server, manually destroying it. Okay. Each client request creates a new thread with the service. Service method gets invoked with the new thread. Servlets. So servlet classes and interfaces are available in packages in Java Servlet Development Toolkit. javax.servlet.http and javax.servlet. These are the two packages where you have all your code. Like as you have asked, javax.servlet is where you have all the generic servlet related stuff, and anything related to HTTP is all part of javax.servlet.http. Okay, it's not Java dot anymore. JavaX, that means extension. Okay, fine. Servlet interface. So servlets interfaces are like generic servlet um, is an abstract class. It implements servlet interface, and then HTTP servlet actually um, extends generic servlet, and then my servlet, the servlet that we are writing, actually extends a HTTP servlet. That means we inherit all the behavior of generic servlet and also HTTP servlet. That's why we were able to communicate with the browser. So generic servlet class, request, generic servlet, response. Okay. HTTP servlet handling a request. So HTTP servlet get request goes to servlet, does the do get and responds back. If it is a post request, it invokes the do post and responds back. Do head, only the header gets sent, and we send back the response header. So these are all the HTTP methods that are being supported, like do get, do post, do head, do put, do delete. Okay. So implementation of do get do post is to return an error to the calling client if servlet does not override these methods. Okay. Generic servlet has these methods that we know, and HTTP servlet extends this, and do get and do post and do options, do put, do delete, do trace. These are all the six methods that are being available in HTTP. Like a service method is been overridden, and based on the kind of HTTP request or that you send, one of these methods get invoked. Okay. Do get will get the resource. Do post will, if you want to submit something to the server, use do post. If you want to update something, you're going to use do put. Do options will provide what are all the options that are being supported by this HTTP servlet, like get, post, put, and stuff like that. Do delete actually deletes something on a server. Do trace will show the information, like how exactly it's been invoking the servlet. Okay, so these are the standard HTTP methods that a HTTP servlet has, and you're going to override one of these based on the kind of request. Uh, till now, if you ask me, probably I used these three, not any of these. Like, okay, do get, do post, or do put. Okay. How do they work? Get and post. Okay, so get and post. Request, we send the request. Service method, if it is a get, like in the request that has been submitted to server, type of request is also been there in the that has been sent to the server. And if it is get, it invokes do get directly. If it is post, it invokes do post directly. But if you look at it in our application here, what happens when we receive a do get or a do post? Can somebody tell me? Even if do post is been invoked, what happens?
Do get it invoked.
Yeah. So this is a typical implementation, like either if you invoke do get also, people may do as a do post or something like that. Like that way, we are giving only one implementation, but both are being invoked. This is not very secured here, right? You're just invoking some resource. But paradigm is, if you are getting some resource, use get. If you are posting some data, use post. Okay. Okay. So HTTP servlet subclass has these methods. Click request type, it is get, hence call do get. Web services, like if not, then load it. Okay. So these are the various classes and interfaces we're going to talk about in a bit, but I want to tell you guys the difference between do get and do post before that. Okay. So we have a do get and do post. The problem with the do get and do post is not the problem, the difference. Get is to get any resource. Post is to update some data. Okay. You can ask me, can't I pass data to get? You can, but there is a limitation to it. Like you can pass only 255 characters. There is a limitation of 255 characters on do get uh, if you post some data. Whereas do post doesn't have any limitation. It can take in as much data as you send. Like for example, if you have used a do get for sign up form, like sign up form, HTML form has like a lot of data. If you're signing up, people has a lot of data, right? All the data, if you're posting using like all the data you're sending it to server and invoked a do get, everything is visible in the everything is visible here in the query string, right? That means, okay, if you pass it like this, okay, all I'm trying to show you guys here is how you can actually read the data that has been passed here. Okay, so because I'm passing test, like anything that you pass here, because it's a get request, uh, will be displayed in the query string. If you want to explicitly do a post, what happens is nothing gets displayed, which is secure, right? You cannot show people's username and password on the browser, uh, which is like if you show clear text of a password, that means you are not supporting security at all. Okay, so that's why we don't show it in the browser. um, Post will not show anything in the browser, so that's why we use post for those kind of stuff. Like if you're posting some data, that means you want to you want you don't want to show it in the browser as a clear text to anybody. Okay, that's fine. That's one limitation. Like data gets displayed in the browser, and whereas post data does not get displayed because it is displayed on the browser. This one, there is a limitation of 255 characters. Okay, there is a limitation of 255 characters, and because 255 characters is the limitation, you don't want to use it. If it is less, then you can use it probably for submitting the data. If you are for sure 100% sure that always you're going to pass only 255 characters, then you are good, you are fine. Okay, that is one thing. And what is the other definition? Do get do get is an idempotent, whereas do post is not. What is idempotent? Idempotent is nothing but execute it 100 times, like as per spec. Even if you execute 100 times, you should implement in such a way that the response will be the same. Like if you are getting an image, downloading an image from server, like even if you execute it 10 times, it's going to be same. But if you are actually uploading something, like using post is nothing but you're doing something operation on write operation onto the database, right, or a server. So if you execute 10 times, it's going to upload 10 images. Like the example that I gave other day, IRCTC thing. That means two threads executed it two times because it's an idempotent, not an idempotent operation. When I executed two times, I got two reservations reserved. If I would have executed 10 times, I would have got 10 reservations reserved, right? That's the problem. So when you are handling with do post, it's not idempotent. Do get is idempotent. Um, got the difference? Like when to use do get, when to use do post. Whenever you are accessing resources, then only use do get. Whenever you are submitting some data to server, make sure you are using do post. Okay. Now you know the difference. Any questions? It's important interview question. People ask. Based on this, they can judge whether you have used do get or not.
What is do put method do?
Yeah, it updates. If you want to do an update, like if you want to put some thing on the server, like do post is like it may write to database and stuff like that. But do put is like similar to do post, but like it's like an update. If you already have a Teja at PNG on server, if you're sending it one more time, it's going to override the same file, like file system. Uh, it's not like creating 10 times. It's actually updating you same file 10 times. If it is not there, it's going to create, but if it is there, it's going to override it. Got it?
I'm not getting the difference between do post and do put.
I did not hear you. You got to be a little louder.
Difference between do post and do put. I
Do
didn't
post
get
and
that.
do put, both are doing the update operation. Agreed. But the thing is, do put can also be idempotent. Like if you're updating the same file 10 times on the server, you may not see 10 different files like this. Do put is used for putting some resources on the server. Okay. Here, say I created a file. There's very thin line of difference here, according to spec. Here, let's see. Okay, here you have test.txt. Okay. So as you said, whether I use do post or do put, I am going to write it to here, right? If you're doing for the same operation here, for do get, do put or do post, like writing a file, then do post and do put are same. But the problem, the thing I am trying to say here is, if you have used do put, don't think about do post for a minute. What I'm trying to say is, if you have used do put, according to the spec, okay, okay. So The put operation allows the client to place a file on the server. Think about it like you're using it to put something on the server. So 10 times you put this, no problem. Okay, 10 times you put this, it's going to just overwrite this file 10 times, right? That's
Yes.
all. You're not going to have 10 different files here. Okay,
Okay.
unless you put a new file all the time. But it's like a file system kind of thing. Like do put is like a file system kind of thing. But if you say I have overridden do post and do put in such a way, whether you used do put or do post, both are doing the same thing, then there is no difference between do post and do put. But according to the spec, do put is used to put a file on the server, like when you're doing an FTP. Okay. Whereas do post is actually you're submitting data. If you are doing do post, according to the specification, what we are going to do is we are going to submit the data. That means if you look at it here, like a sign up form, if you submit it 10 times for the same with the same data, what is going to happen? 10 users are going to be created if the email address is unique, or if all those are being satisfied, right? Or if the do post is invoked 10 times simultaneously, if a server is not handling the concurrency properly, what's going to happen? All 10 are going to win. So you're going to end up creating 10 users, which is not intended. Whereas do put is like a fail, putting a resource on the server. Post is to submit data, like it has to write something to some place. If your implementation is same, if your implementation is same between do put and do post, then it's nothing but it then it's going to there is no difference. Like if you are giving a same behavior for do put and do post, then no problem, there is no difference at all. But idea of do put is to put something as a resource on the server, not to submit data. When you are submitting data, use do post. That's the idea. But there is no other limitation between no other difference. Like the way we want to use it is for different purposes. Otherwise there is no difference. See here, this method does not need to be either safe or idempotent. That means it need not be secured. Like you may put a resource something on the server. As I said, if you are sending new file all the time, then it is not idempotent. But if you're sending same file multiple times, it is idempotent, like because it's not going to write any new file, it's just going to update. Think about it like it is just updating the same record. Whereas if you do the same thing on do post, it's actually going to write those many times to the server if the behavior is like to write to the database. uh, Other than that, there is not much difference. But if you talk about it in REST API, like these days REST representative state transfer is actually the paradigm to actually write web services. Those are also like servlets that you see right now. People use people use create or to create any resource. That's the principle. That's by principle. If you look at the behavior, it's going to be same. But by principle, if you are writing or creating anything, you're going to use it as create. And if you're updating something to the server, you're going to use a put method. That boils down to, I'm thinking, uh, anything that you are creating a new resource, you're going to use do post. Anything that you're going to update, you're going to use do put. Did it make any sense to you?
Yes.
Yeah. So behavior wise, as you said, there may not be much difference if you are giving the same behavior. But the idea of like it's same as like you may ask me the same question between difference between do get and to do put also, right? If I used do get also to do the same thing as do put, then there is no difference between these two. Okay. But do get has some limitations. That's why you did not ask why do get is how do get is different from do put. But do get and do post also are doing the same thing if I am giving the same behavior, and no problem, it executes fine. But according to the principles that it is being designed for is to put some resources onto the server. like a file or some HTTP, FTP file or something to update if you invoke multiple times. Post is to actually submit the data. It's just the paradigm difference. It's not anything that you're going to do as different. The idea of
Ravi,
the yeah.
Ravi, one question. You said when we pass do post, we are not able, the parameter which are passed, they are hidden in the web server, right? Where we do
hidden
localhost.
hidden on the hidden on the browser, like
Yes,
browser.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, over here. So when we do put, is it in the same manner or its parameters are visible?
No, it's probably same as do post.
Okay.
Yeah, you can try that. Like here. I'm just trying to simulate whatever you guys are asking for. So I'm just creating a form, HTML form, and I'm trying to submit the value of test request. Okay. So we'll just modify while executing it, like put and get and all that stuff. Okay. So it says it knows only get and post. Multiple annotations found at this undefined attribute value put. See, it knows only get and post. It's probably a Eclipse thing, but let me give it a try using put. Otherwise, we have to create a invoke it through JavaScript or something like that. Or I have to create a JSP probably. Let me see if I put it as JSP, it will be fine. Yeah, then it will not complain. Okay, so you guys jumped again ahead, so that's why I had to create a JSP. Right. Fine. This is all
Why
okay.
Ravi? It's not taking on normal
Yeah,
server.
this is all Java related, so HTML may not know. HTML knows only get and post, whereas
Okay.
this is JSP is like Java code within HTML. That knows it.
Okay.
Okay, just I'm just creating something. So on load of the page itself, it will show. I think I'm fine. That's okay. And okay. What is it called? Servlets, right? Servlets slash http actions.js. Okay. So it showed me a text box here, right? I'll also create a button. Alright. So now I'm using put. When I'm using put and click on submit, what happens? Action is hello. That means when I say hello, what did we learn? It goes here and all that, right? Yeah, it goes here and it works this servlet and all that. Okay. So let's see. I'm going to put my debug pointer in do put. Okay. So let's go ahead and enter the data. Okay. And click on submit. When you click on submit, it should not display anything on the URL. That's the idea. Okay. Let's see if it does it or not. All right. See here. It says slash hello. All right. So what's happening here is I gave a mistake here on UI here. Hmm. Okay. So it says restart. It's not taking my changes here. Hmm. Let me restart. Okay, so got it here. Let's go do this. What is it? Servlets, right? Got it here. Let's see. Okay, it's invoking do get directly. See, doesn't honor my do put. But is it not stopping here? Put, right? What did I put in here in HTTP actions? Put. So though HTTP form has put and it did not complain anything for us, it's going to send only put request. Okay. So through JSP, I thought we can do it, but it's not happening. Okay. How else I can post a put request? Let me see. See, put is not supplied on the form. That's fine. So request method put. Okay, let me see. Okay, so it's executing get, so that's why you will see it here. But we want to execute it as put. Then what I'm going to do here is generic servlet service method. Okay, let me actually override this method and see. Okay, so it's not supported from the UI directly. All you're going to do is service, invoke service. Here you got to deal with it as post. I'm also trying this. Let me see if it works. Let's see what this is going to do, whether it will show on the URL or not. Oops, I did this. Okay. Okay, so let's see how this is going to change our stuff. Okay. Save it's not support. Hmm. Okay, maybe I could have just done this. Let me give it a try. Otherwise, we'll go with okay. So okay, okay. So here, so it's still calling the same. It's not calling to put request dot get method. I'm just trying to see if it is taking the put or not in the get. See, it's defaulting it to get. This guy can send a post like this. Adding the attribute for the form element. Do I have to put any encoding or something? Probably in the top. Let's see. Maybe I need to put some encoding or something. Get request. So this guy put form action. This is what I'm doing now. If none matches, updating an existing resource, deleting an existing resource. So okay, if match some number here. Okay. If match, do get. Okay. Yeah, but it's not supporting for me. Yeah, other way to support it is probably, but that will not help you guys in understand it. Other way I have is I have a REST client here like this. So I can invoke my server from here by invoking a put. Okay, but that doesn't help you guys whether it is actually sending it in the query parameter or not. Okay, but let me give it a try probably. Servlets slash hello, not hello, servlet slash hello put, and you want to put some elements, right? So our put, let it go through this one. Okay, that's fine. So what I'm going to do here is do put, right? um, I'm executing a put method like this. Why it's doing this? Put method, and what we need to do, hello, and so what is the stuff that we are trying to post? Hello, and we want to send a put request, and parameter that we want to pass is request, right? Test request, test request. Okay, and let's see how the payload will be different for get, post, and put probably. Okay, let's see this. What is this processor thread? I mean, in the back end. Let me actually restart the server. Okay, so put as the server is restarted, debug mode. Let me actually hit this. Okay, because we are sending it as a put. Now it invokes put. But the thing is, you guys will not appreciate it because you will not know the raw request and response probably. But let me see if it makes any sense to you. Okay, so response is this raw request. So request went in like this. So origin, user agent, and test request, right? Request header has it. Okay, let me do the same with get, and how does that change? Like let me take this as a request header. Okay, I'll just compare it like post, how the request header is going to server. This is not post, this is put, this is get, this is post. Okay, I'll just try to compare three request headers. Get and passing the same request. How does that do? Okay, it invoked it directly, but request went in like yeah, you will not see any difference in the header because hmm, if I show only through browser, you guys will appreciate it. But let me see, it's a get, right? Let me go here, then post. Let's see how post will do it. Okay, request headers for All three seem to be same to me. Let me see. Is there any difference? Is there any difference here? Let's see. Post, test request, content type, accept this. No difference even between get and post right here. If you see the headers, yeah. If you want to do it on the browser,
Content type, it is not present in Get.
content type is not present in those two, but I can remove that. That is not required actually. I used it for my web services probably. I can just put text HTML for everything. Yeah. Probably for post it is considering the content type, right? Content type, where is it taking it? Only in post. Oh no. Oh, in put and post it is taking, but not in get. Yeah, but that may not you enough. Let me see how else we can invoke it. This is one way to invoke it. Browser doesn't support. How else we are going to invoke it? Let me see. Do put in HTML. Do put invocation. Do put. But the browser should show it. Right? Mm. Probably FTP clients only support this. I'm also interested to see how to post a put.
Ravi?
To modify resource on server is straightforward for modern web servers using HTML HTTP request. I will have to do an Ajax request or something like this probably.
Ravi?
Yeah.
Is it put as a new attribute? Means
No,
I
no,
never,
it's been there, but you cannot do a form request probably. It's
because I
been there
never
already.
heard of it. Means
Hmm?
I never heard of it. Means put. I
No, no,
never
it's
heard
been
of.
there. At least it's been there from past 10 years. That I can guarantee
Okay.
you. Yeah.
Okay. So is
So,
it being
except
used
that we did not use
frequently?
it in, except that we did not use it in farm posts. Then if this is the case, uh, uh, how people test it on the web is what I'm thinking. Let me see. It's not new. It's been there. Don't be under that. So with that being said, HTTP servlet, generic servlet, and all that stuff. Make sure you have Tomcat downloaded and execute this sample. So the handshake between the browser and Tomcat. So Tomcat is up and running or not. You guys will know all that. Once that is done, it makes more sense in the subsequent sessions about other methods. Okay. Any questions?
No. No.
Yeah. Okay. I'll stop it right here then.